Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Everyone, and welcome back to another show of Business Innovators Radio. Again, I'm your host, Matthew Lochran, Principal Consultant of Midtown West Media. Today we have a very special and educational show for you. Today we have special guest Allan Christian. Allan works with the U.S. Department of Commerce within the U.S. Commercial Service Division. Allan is a senior international trade specialist, again, based out of the state of Oregon. So, Allan, I want to welcome you to the show.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we have a lot of content to get into, so I'm kind of going to jump right in here. But first, would love to know a little bit about your background and kind of, if you can maybe share a little bit about your story, about how did you even get involved in international business?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've always sort of had an interest in international travel and just meeting people from other countries. And so, I had, as a undergraduate, I achieved a degree in international relations. I had also studied engineering for a while. I got my BA in international relations from the State University of New York, New Paltz, New York, a fantastic school. Worked for BMW North America for a little while, for maybe about a year and a half, actually at a very large dealership. And then I did a master's degree in economics at Syracuse University, and I was one of the few people in our program to really focus on international economics. So, international trade, international finance, economics of development, topics like that. And so when I graduated, I had been looking at a number of options. I had some friends who were working in Washington, D.C., and one who had looked at opportunities working with the International Trade Administration, which is the parent of my organization, U.S. Commercial Service. At any rate, I looked at openings there. I applied, and before I knew it, I'd gotten hired. My first job was as an import compliance specialist, working on the unfair trading cases for people who, know more about trade. It's, anti-dumping and countervailing duty cases. And, that work was basically financial analysis and investigative, but really, it was just a stepping stone for me. I really was always most interested in export business development and working with companies to help them build international markets. And so I've been doing that work now for about a little over 25 years.
Great to hear. I'm a native New Yorker myself, so nice to hear that you went to state school over there at New Paltz. So good to hear that.
Excellent. Yeah.
And I know you're in Oregon now.
That's right.
So,
I should have pointed out.
Yes, it's currently located in Oregon, and I'm assuming, working with some Oregon organizations for the exporting process then. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've been here in Oregon 20 years, and our office, our U.S. Commercial Service here in Portland, our service areas, so for the clients, the companies that we assist, are throughout Oregon, and we also cover part of Washington State. We cover Southwest Washington, so Vancouver, Camas, which is essentially that part of Washington is part of the Portland metro area, so it makes a lot of sense for us to provide client assistance into that part of Washington State. We have a Seattle office and a one-person Spokane office that covers the rest of Washington.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess focusing in on the Oregon market right now as well. Obviously, you've been helping organizations in that region now for quite some time. What would you say is maybe some differentiators in Oregon products abroad, in maybe the agricultural or food and beverage products?
Sure, yeah.
Quite unique.
Right. There are some definite things that make Oregon quite unique. I mean, first of all, to look at the size of this, we're only 4 million people, right? So we're about 25 states have more population than we do. But if you look at the number of food processors, as an example, this is a market where Oregon is very advanced. We have many specialty food and beverage processors here, from fruits and vegetable products to wine, to craft beer, to craft hard cider, to companies that are doing all kinds of grains, teas, you name it. I mean, it's really, we have a very significant presence in that market, and many of those companies do export. So that's just an example of one industry. We also have quite a few companies in, the medical device and dental sector, sporting goods, outdoor recreation, apparel sector. Oregon's got, and of course, many people may not realize our largest export out of Oregon is actually integrated circuits. And of course, the biggest player in that is Intel. Intel has more employees here in Oregon than they do anywhere in the world, including California. They're about 19,000. And they have a lot of their most advanced manufacturing and engineering divisions here in Oregon. So, we're a state that does everything from specialty food and beverage products right up to integrated circuits. So, and many products in between.
Quite the range, right? From craft commerce goods to semiconductor. Seems like Oregon has quite the cross section, especially when it comes to the international and exporting markets. One thing I guess I would like to kind of focus in on as well is, Oregon is quite unique, and in that uniqueness, how does that come across, in the international markets, right?
Yeah,
so I think
good question.
We have, high quality goods in Oregon. Being in a marketing and branding field myself, I understand the power of storytelling and the power of putting out a positive view of your brand when you're entering a marketplace. We'd love to hear some insights that you've ever seen as good examples, or stuff that companies can be doing better to
sure
they're putting on a great face abroad.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think, certainly Oregon is even wrestling with that now, how to do a better job of really promoting brand Oregon, right? Fortunately, there are some markets where Oregon is quite well known in Japan, and that's a bit of an anomaly because for years there was a Japanese program called From Oregon with Love. It was a program that ran for 12 years in Japan, about a pair of Japanese teenagers that are sent to live in rural Oregon with relatives here. But the effect of that was to really put Oregon on the map in Japan. And of course, it showcased the beauty here, the uniqueness, how green and clean it is here in Oregon. And Oregon companies were really able to take advantage of that and develop the Japanese market. And of course, from that point, it's grown into other markets. So there's definitely a big effort here to associate the fact that, there's a lot of organic and natural products cultivated in Oregon. This is a very clean state. We have much less pollution than many other states, whether you're talking air, water, other contaminants. And I think there is, because there is such a thriving organic farming culture here and natural and organic food production culture here, that message is starting to get across, and it takes time and it can take a while, but we're seeing Oregon do that. One specific example is the show that happens every year in Anaheim, California, the Natural Products Expo West. If you were to go to that show, you'd find close to 100 Oregon exhibitors. Most of those are specialty food and beverage companies, and that is the largest natural product show in the world. Which is an amazing statement, because most of the largest trade shows in the world are in Germany. But when you look at a show that features the full range of natural products, that's the largest show in the world. And that has been one way in which Oregon has had an aggressive presence and growing presence to really get the word out about what we have to offer here to the world.
So you brought up something very specific right there, which is, Oregon's commanding, some attention at the largest, show in the world that's showcasing these natural foods, which I'm assuming also draws a lot of international buyers, right, to that specific show. Okay.
Yes. So that's one of the things we do.
Yeah. Perfect. Right. That's how can you match me? Right. Yeah. I think is the goal for that show. So I'm really curious though, is, if I'm especially food and beverage, company right now in Oregon, I'm listening to you on the show, is how do I know I'm ready? Like, is there certain steps I should be taking, or,
great question.
Some guidance in that would probably be very beneficial to a lot of those organizations.
Yeah, no, and this really, cuts across all industries, and, we always tell people that, look, you really ought to spend some time putting together a good business plan that addresses, well, first of all, this assumes, you're already in business, right? So if you're already in business, in Oregon or another state, you're offering a product or service. The first thing is, of course, to develop the U.S. market. I mean, for several reasons. I mean, not only is it right here and the easiest to do, but you'll find that when you go internationally, international buyers are going to look a lot at what does your presence in the U.S. market look like. There are sometimes companies that try to push into international really before they're ready, not only because they may not know what they need to know about exporting, right? The export basics and export marketing, export finance, and all that, but also because they haven't really significantly developed the U.S. market enough so that they have the working capital to really pursue international markets, but they also don't have much of a brand recognition in their own market. And international buyers, savvy international buyers are going to look at that. They want to do business with companies that have proven themselves in the U.S. market. And so that point is sometimes lost on people. There are some people that, they start a business and they want to jump into exporting right away. And we're usually trying to rein them in and saying, look, really show that you can successfully launch a product or service in the U.S. market, successfully develop that U.S. market, and then grow that U.S. market to the point where you can then really start supporting export sales.
So just to kind of focus in on that food and beverage segment, then, as we're maybe discussing this for the show, I think that'll probably be helpful. So as you said, you'll launch a brand within the U.S. market. So if I look at the food and beverage segment, then is that ensuring that you can then show international buyers, hey, like XYZ retailer has picked us up, or Absolutely. We have, like our e-commerce numbers are looking like this, boom, 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 boom. Like what? So it's somebody just having that backbone of production and revenue from the back end to then showcase to international buyers that we know what we're doing. This is how we're developing, right? This is how we're connecting with our customer segments, et cetera. Is that kind of on that train of thought that you're seeing right now?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And these international buyers, they know about the major chains here. They understand if you're a specialty, natural food product that nationally you may be selling through Whole Foods. Regionally here, and this may not be known to people outside of the Portland area, but New Seasons is an example of a natural specialty grocer here that's very big in the local market. But a lot of these importers are pretty aware of what the major channels are in the U.S., and so they look to see, what does your U.S. footprint look like? Where have you achieved success? Because they're obviously taking a risk in terms of bringing that brand into their market, and importantly, they want to know that they've got someone who's going to be there to work with them and not just see that effort collapse because the U.S. company is not experienced enough, doesn't have enough working capital, and also doesn't they have to have that commitment to the market. The worst thing you can do is to start working on developing a market and then pulling back because you've suddenly realized, oh wait, we really don't have the financial wherewithal and experience to do this. That's really kind of a tragic mistake to make. So one needs to be careful about when you're deciding to go into a market. I mean, really do it right, or don't do it at all.
Yeah, I think it's important, right? So make sure that not only you can have the follow through, but that's coming across then to foreign buyers, right?
Yeah.
And then speaking about foreign buyers, we just talked about that large show in Anaheim. So if I am a budding food and beverage business in the state of Oregon, what might be some tips you might be able to kind of share on how to even connect or pitch those foreign buyers if I do show up at that show?
Yeah, well, I mean, first, if you're really looking at developing export sales, you're really serious about it. A couple of things. I mean, certainly we have a great website for that. The U.S. Commercial Service has a website, export.gov. people can download for free our Basic Guide to Exporting, which is really a great guide, very extensive. There are also tutorials and webinars that look at every part of the export process, whether it's on export marketing, export finance, payment methods for international shipping and logistics. All of that really is covered. Additionally, too, throughout, let's say, Oregon here, the Small Business Development Center network which is partnered with the community colleges around Oregon. They are supported by those community colleges. They're supported by the state trade agency, Business Oregon, and on the federal level by the U.S. Small Business Administration. And they're really the first point of contact for people are saying, hey, I've got an idea that I really want to get involved in exporting, but I would really like to sit down with someone to help, have them help me develop a export business plan. And so those small business development centers, that would be another really great thing to do. And then, we also have state counterparts that provide a lot of great assistance here. Business Oregon, which is, the rough equivalent on the state level to the U.S. Department of Commerce. And then for food companies, especially the Oregon Department of Agriculture. So there are a lot of groups here that can really help in those initial stages. But tying into your question about foreign buyers, I would say, when you go to a show like the Natural Products Expo West, the way that brand image comes across your company at your booth, your ability to speak about exporting is also going to be a big key point with buyers, right? A buyer will say, okay, well, can you provide me a landed cost for your product? Well, companies that don't know about exporting aren't even going to know what that is, and that's going to be a pretty clear indication to the buyer that, okay, this is a company that just doesn't have this experience. So sort of two answers to that. One is when they talk to a company, it's pretty clear to them early on whether this company has a knowledge of exporting and has done any, and also how successful are they at communicating the brand, the value of that brand, the integrity of that brand, and that's a big thing, particularly at that show, particularly for food and beverage products. It seems to be, I would say, of heightened importance, maybe compared to some other industries. Although every industry has its concerns and ways in which it conveys what's important and how companies fit into that industry and how they demonstrate value in that industry, right? So that does vary.
Absolutely. What I'm hearing here is there is a plethora of resources available for organizations that are thinking, or companies that are thinking about exporting. Number one is first figure out if this business plan is right for your company. Make sure you educate yourself, and then when you do show up, to make sure that not only can you speak intelligently about the process, but you also have the proper collateral to then showcase your brand about, again, in case of this show in Anaheim, I'm assuming then either it's organic or natural elements of the food or beverage is kind of what I'm getting out of that.
Sure. Yeah. That show I mentioned, that the Natural Products Expo West is about I'd say about 70% of the exhibitors are in the natural, organic food and beverage space. I reference the show because it's a show I know well. I've worked at that show every year since 2002. But it's just a great example since we're talking about food and beverage, and it is a show which attracts thousands of international buyers. So, there's really one of the most best places to really encounter buyers and where you can actually see in doing the work that I do, the interface there between buyers, what they're looking for, how they communicate with U.S. exhibitors, those U.S. exhibitors that are really significantly invested in exporting, and how, of course, they communicate their company and brand message to those buyers, to those international buyers.
And I'm sure the samples are delicious.
They certainly are, yeah. If you walk in that show and you're not grabbing any samples, you're making a mistake.
In conjunction, obviously there's a lot of support, it sounds like, and research to be done. I'm sure that there's people that try to, fast track it, right? And
sure,
I'm sure they kind of encompass some pitfalls along the way. Can you maybe share some of those common pitfalls that you've seen? Maybe companies that have jumped in a little too quick.
Yeah, definitely, because we see that a lot where, and it certainly can happen as a result of meeting buyers at, one of many internet shows, either major shows in the U.S. that to which foreign buyers come, or by participate. Although we don't see too many companies in the initial stages actually exhibiting at a show, let's say overseas or in another international market. But yeah, a lot of times you have the opportunity in front of you, and you're feeling like, okay, wow, I'm just talking to this buyer from Japan or South Korea or Brazil or Australia, wherever, and you're excited about the opportunity, and then you realize that, oh wait, I haven't given thought to this. I haven't given thought as to how am I going to support this effort in terms of I've got product regulatory issues to deal with here. A product probably needs to be relabeled to be in compliance with laws of that country. So now I've got to provide a landed cost. It's very likely that I'm going to have to work with a freight forwarder and manage, certainly the outgoing shipment, manage the logistics piece of it, right? And that can vary a lot. You get into international commercial terms, and there are all kinds of variations from, X works, I make my product available on my dock, you, the buyer, come and get it, which we recommend, all the way to, hey, I'm going to get my product all the way to your door in your country, and so not only am I going to deal with the whole export process, but I will also handle the importation in your country, which can be a big mistake too. There are some companies that do that, by the way, but these are companies that are providing products in a supply chain, let's say to a manufacturer. But so what I see is companies are chasing opportunities without stepping back to say, oh, wait a minute, I don't know everything about this process. I don't know that I have the financial wherewithal to to be able to travel to that country, to meet the buyer. I mean, they're here, but if you're going to be doing business with them, you really ought to be traveling there to see what their operations are like. Again, there's the whole issue around product, regulatory issues. Product will have to be relabeled. So you start getting into these costs that, if you're doing your homework ahead of time, you can really attach a cost to each of these, right? You can say, okay, these are going to be the additional efforts and additional costs required for me to get my product into that international market. So then you know what you're committing yourself to. But sometimes companies they jump at the opportunity, and then they start looking into the matter and start realizing that they're not at the stage of evolution where they can really support that. And not only just from a financial perspective, but if you don't have anybody in the company who is really handling export business development, well, who's going to do that? And that's going to take a significant amount of time and focus away from what else they're doing in the company, right? So, I mean, those are just a few of the issues right there.
No, absolutely. You brought a great point there about having proper human capital within the organization, to not only plan for an export, segment of your business, but then to manage, I'm sure, as well. And then one thing you also brought up in that last comment there was different regulations around, labeling and so forth. I'm really curious if I'm a company looking to export, how do I know how to navigate those international regulations? Is that something where an organization like yourself helps out with, or?
Yeah, I mean, we do, but for food and beverage, even more so, our partner organization, the Foreign Agricultural Service, which is the export promotion division of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, is a group that we work frequently with, especially when we're working to help processed food and beverage companies. I mean, those are companies that the Foreign Agricultural Service provides a huge amount of assistance to, as do we. It's the only product area really where both of our organizations really assist. Part of it is that obviously FAS has more of that agricultural expertise, but of course, those kind of the processed food and beverage products travel through channels, through importers, distributors, and retailers that are also very well known to our organization. So it really makes a lot of sense for us to work in tandem with the Foreign Agricultural Service to assist as exporters. But their website at www.fas.usda.gov has a great amount of information on what would be the import regulations and labeling and standards issues that affect food and beverage products. So there's a lot of good assistance there, as well as, at least for Oregon companies, the Oregon Department of Agriculture plays that role as well. And our organization, we're fairly familiar with a lot of that also. So yeah, there's definitely help there. And I would say get that information. Those reports are freely available because you will find a lot of variation. You'll find some markets to be much more difficult to get into with regard to satisfying the regulatory and labeling requirements versus other markets. So there's a wide variation there in what we could say are market access issues from one country to the next.
Now, so far we've talked a lot about the process of getting product there. I'm really curious, once it's there, right, depending on the channel or how you do it, right. It's going to be, if you're working directly with a buyer there or a distributor. Yeah. Can you maybe let some advice to some folks on actually how to create some demand for your product? So once it gets there, right, the point is for it to sell so you can actually keep sending product there. I'm sure that's a question that they're going to have as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Several answers to that. I mean, one is certainly to continue to exhibit at the major food shows in the U.S. because you're going to continue to get more buyers coming to these shows from other countries. Those major shows, National Products Expo West is one I mentioned, continue every year to bring in more and more international buyers. But there are major food shows in those countries as well. Whether you're participating in something like the Fine Foods Australia show or the Anuga show in Germany, you want to be in the market as well. You also want to work closely with your importer distributor to look at what kind of in-country promotions you can do. Everything from in-store promotions at major retail chains. That's really a great thing to do. Really get in front of consumers there, and of course, for companies that are supplying. We can't forget there's the whole hospitality industry. So, and there are shows that are centered around that too. The Food and Hotel Asia show in Singapore, here in the U.S., the National Restaurant Association show. So, a lot of those specialty food and beverage products are not only, sold to consumers through retail channels, whether they're mass market, supermarket, specialty retail, but also through the hospitality industry, right? Through restaurants, hotels, resorts, and so that represents yet another opportunity. And I think the thing is to have an importer distributor who understands those channels. They have established contacts, let's say, with retailers and food and beverage service buyers. And importantly, what other brands have they launched? An experienced importer distributor should have a good story to tell. Okay, these are other U.S. food products that we've launched in our market. Maybe these are food products from other countries that we've launched. And so, they're going to also be a really key partner for you in saying, how do we now position our product or brand in this market, not only in terms of getting in front of the right buyers, but also with regard to navigating the cultural issues around that as well.
Yeah, and to me, that really kind of ties in into what I really want to jump in next with you is your specific organization in regards to U.S. commercial service. All right, so understand you guys actually have some kind of customized, business development services, the initial market check, initial partner search, a gold key service. Can you maybe explain a little bit about those types of services that you guys actually offer?
Yeah, and I should make it known that, of course, the way in which we're able to do this is because we have offices in 80 countries around the world. Okay. Yeah, our staff are
around the globe. That is what it sounds like.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're in 80 countries around the world, and if you were to look at the major export markets to which U.S. companies sell, that we're in those markets. We do have a relationship with the U.S. State Department. We have State Department partner posts for smaller markets, But so having colleagues in the country, we have, commercial officers that are U.S. citizens that, work in that country, typically for a period of, let's say, 4 years. They will go through language training before they're there if they're not already, sufficiently fluent in the language. But most of the staff that we have in these countries around the world are natives of that country. So, they're working with us, so they're fluent in English, but they're also native speakers of the language, and they often come to us with really good educational backgrounds. They've perhaps also worked in the private sector. So having that staff in these countries enables us to provide those services. And those services that you mentioned, our initial market check is a service that we offer. It's a relatively inexpensive service for at least small companies. It is at different tiered pricing, right? For small companies, medium, large. Typically, small company definition is 500 employees or less. It's a pretty generous definition, right? It's the SBA definition. Yeah, it's not what I would define as a small company, but it's a very generous definition. So these services for small companies, particularly, are really intended to be very affordable because we're doing what we're doing because we're trying to create jobs in the U.S. We're trying to support small and medium-sized companies that are developing products and services, and in doing so in exporting those products, right, and developing new markets. Those companies will grow and hire more people. But getting back to the services, the international market check is a service that we've been offering the last few years, and is really a great way to be in contact with our staff and country to say, okay, this is the product or service the company is looking to sell. What do you see as the market prospects there? I mean, the company may, have an idea already, but this is to really get a much better idea by our staff can talk to potential importers, distributors. They can talk to, let's say, retailers or trade associations, and they can get a much better idea for what the current market receptivity is for that service. And then, if we really think that there's really a pretty good market in that country for the product or service offered by the U.S. exporter, we could take it a step further and then actually do a customized international business partner search for the company. We offer that in two flavors, so to speak. The international partner search is a service that would identify and qualify those potential partners, those importers, distributors, retailers, and the U.S. company would get a very detailed report back on interested potential prospects. But we really encourage companies to take it a step further and to use our Gold Key service, because then you're actually then going to the country and then you're meeting with these potential partners face to face, being supported by our staff there. Our staff there will set up the meetings for you. Our staff there will make sure that you're getting into a good hotel. That if you have any needs for having an interpreter at the meeting, or if you need any assistance with arranging in-country transportation. I mean, basically, we'll do what is necessary to make sure that those meetings go off, as successfully as possible. And so, those kind of services we offer in all the 80 countries. There's quite a bit. We do many of them every year. They're, I would say, in fairly high demand, and we're always, trying to do what we can to be able to offer more of that kind of service.
Yeah, so to me, I mean, it sounds like a great kind of ladder a company can take if they're thinking about going through the exporting process, right? Going through the initial market check, after they've done their own research, just to kind of get that verification. And then moving on to the partner search period, where all right, let's see who we can find, to be a good business partner within the organization. And then finally, I want to see the whites of your eyes if I'm sending all my product over there. We want a long-term business relationship. Then let's definitely go through with the Gold Key service at that point as well. Great, that was quite the educational experience, I think, going through here for the last 30 minutes or so. Now, I always kind of wrap some of these interviews up with a fun little question. Now, being in Oregon for 20 years and being outdoor enthusiasts there, would love to know, what is your favorite Oregon hike?
Well, actually, I'm going to expand that definition. Say, what's my favorite hike in the Pacific Northwest? Because, I do a lot of hiking and backpacking, and my favorite has been North Cascades National Park. I've done within the last 3 years, I've done 2 backpacking trips there, and to me, that's the most amazing part of the Cascade Range. The most rugged mountains. You have more glaciers there than anywhere in the lower 48, waterfalls. There are certainly many outstanding locations here in Oregon, too. I would say in and around Mount Hood, Mount Jefferson, the Wallowas in northeast Oregon are often overlooked and really quite distinct from the Cascade Mountains. They're geologically much more similar to the Rocky Mountains. So those are some of my favorite places in Oregon. But I'd have to say my favorite location that I've done hiking or backpacking in is actually been up in Washington State in North Cascades National Park. So wonderful place.
Well, great, Allan. Again, really appreciate your time. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule to come on the show today and educate our listeners about, the ways that they can get involved to export. And then if you can, just one final time, can you just give your organization's website so they can go and grab some of those free documents and get some more information?
Yeah, absolutely. And fortunately, it's quite easy. It's just export.gov. And you will see there's quite a range of information. I would encourage people to start out with the basic guide to exporting, which will be listed under export guides. And the other thing is, if you go under, when you're on that front page, so to speak, if you select Contact Us, you can get a complete listing of all our offices around the U.S. as well as our offices in international locations. So, we certainly look forward to assisting more small and medium-sized exporters. Thanks, Matt.
Great. Al, thank you very much.
All right, you take care.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.